For example, in that time period, if somebody was to say, Jesus ain't nobody, he didn't really take 2 fish and 5 loaves and multiply it. What really happened was he got on the cell phone, called Mary and Martha Stewart, said, I'm running short, can you cook about 10,000 more lunches? If somebody was to rise up and say that, there would be a group and a conglomerate of believers who would rise up and say, wait a minute, you're lying. I was there. I tasted the bread myself. I stood there on Calvary and I watched him bleed as they hurled insults at them. But over time, these eyewitnesses begin to die off. And as they begin to die, the picture of who Christ was began to be distorted in that culture. And I found it intriguing that as long as there were eyewitnesses around, as long as there were people who had seen Christ for themselves, the more difficult it was for that culture to distort the picture of who Christ was. Can I submit to you that the reason Christ is being distorted in our culture today is because there aren't enough eyewitnesses. There aren't enough people who have been in the presence of God long enough to know who Jesus really is. So we have a lot of people that know church, but there's a vast difference between knowing church and knowing Jesus. See, I found you can come to church for years and still not know who Jesus is. You can come to CFNI and still not know who Jesus is. You can jump up and down and shout and do all kinds of spiritual calisthenics and still not know who Jesus is. Or you can speak in more tongues than the United Nations and still not know who Jesus is. And whenever Christ is not intimately known, he cannot be accurately shown, and his picture will become distorted in that culture. I love what Robert Bowman says in his prolific work, Putting Jesus in His Place. He says, and I quote, interpretations of Jesus are fraught with bias. He's a powerful figure whom people want on their sides, and they're willing to recreate him in their image to enlist his support. Animal rights activists imagine a vegetarian Jesus. New Agers make him an example of finding God within. And radical feminists strip him of divinity so that Christianity doesn't appear sexist. Frankly, it's hard to escape the feeling that our culture has taken Jesus' question, who do you say that I am, and changed it to, who do you want me to be? Unquote. If that doesn't speak to the ideology and the nature of our culture, because we love the Jesus of who do you want me to be. See, I found most people don't really want to reject Jesus. They don't say, Jesus, talk to the hand. No, people want Jesus. They just want him on their terms. They just want him to be a butler and an aide and acquiesce to what it is that they want. I believe it was A.W. Tozer that once quipped that it is a strange paradox that God created us in his image, but yet every day we recreate him in ours. See, we're like former President Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, he absolutely loved the teachings of Jesus Christ. In fact, he called them the most benevolent code of morals which has ever been offered to man. The only problem was Jefferson was a child of the Enlightenment, so he did not have a cognitive category for miracles or for the supernatural. So true story, one night, Jefferson took some scissors and he decided to cut out everything that he disagreed with in the Bible. It took him about 2 or 3 nights to do this, and when he had finished, he had cut out the virgin birth, he had cut out angels, he cut out the resurrection. Jefferson extracted every single miracle, and the result was a book entitled The Life and Morals of Jesus of Nazareth, or what is commonly referred to as the Jefferson Bible. Now, if you're like me and you acquiesce to the fact that the Bible is the infallible word of God, then some righteous indignation had to rise up in you and say, wait a minute, Jefferson, you can't do that. You can't cut and pick what part of the Bible you want to agree with and disagree with. But before you point a finger at Jefferson, how many know we got to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, because we do the same thing. Oh, you might not physically cut it out, but how many know we ignore verses we can't comprehend? We avoid the verses we don't like. We rationalize verses that are too radical. And what happens is you're left with a God who can never surprise you, who can never transcend you, and who can never contradict you. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have a God who can never contradict you, then you can never be changed.